It has become a familiar challenge at the Rhode Island State House over the past decade, figuring out a way to close the annual budget deficit. This year's $9.2 billion budget relies on the governor coming up with $25 million of yet-to-be-specified cuts, and the legislature scooping millions of dollars in reserves from agencies like the Narragansett Bay Commission. But what if there was more money available, without having to raise taxes, fees, or use other financial gimmicks? Ray Berberick of Portsmouth has a suggestion.
Create an office of the Inspector General.
It's a pitch that he gave to Governor Lincoln Chafee 5 years ago when Berberick and others were fighting a proposal to toll vehicles on the Sakonnet River Bridge. Politicians trying to close yet another budget gap had asked the opponents, in lieu of tolls, where would you find the money? Berberick's answer was simple and direct.
Create an office of the Inspector General. Let them do their work, and they will find scores of millions of dollars in funds that are spent incorrectly.
Berberick served for 2 years as an Inspector General when he was stationed with the U.S. Army at Fort Sill, Oklahoma in the mid-1990s. He had to be trained before taking over the position.
During the training, I said, my God, if only half the people in the world knew the concepts of what the Inspector General can bring to the table to make things more efficient and effective, and there would be a lot less, not fraud, waste, and abuse from criminal intent, but just streamline procedures and save everybody time.
Berberick and other proponents envision an Inspector General whose duties lie somewhere between the state's Auditor General and the Rhode Island Attorney General, with a focused mission of looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. And if the IG comes across potential criminal activity, he or she would immediately stop and refer it to the AG.
The Inspector General does not inspect or investigate people. If you go and look at all of the states that have inspectors general and read all of the annual reports, it's all about systems. It's all about fraud, waste, and abuse and inefficiencies. Not once do they investigate one person because they did something bad a couple of years ago.
Massachusetts was the first state in the country to create the position 35 years ago, and is one of 12 states nationwide to have an IG. And Berberick says Florida has taken it one step further.
They have 26 agencies, each with their own Inspector General. Education, the jails, schools, Dade County, the list goes on.
In Rhode Island, an Inspector General bill has been filed each session for nearly a decade, including 2 on the House side and 2 on the Senate side in 2017. But they've gone nowhere. Berberick testified in May before the House Finance Committee, along with the lead sponsor of one of the bills, Representative Robert Lancia, a Cranston Republican.
What do you sense that the hesitancy is on this?
Despite, I think, the gains that could be made financially, I mean, I think there's some worry that, that sometimes you're giving up, some authority of power. So I get it. But ultimately, I think the pros do outweigh the cons. I think we've seen Massachusetts and other states where hundreds of millions of dollars have been saved.
What do you think the biggest misconception is?
That they're attack dogs, they're political tools to torpedo people. And that's a 180 from the truth.
One potential obstacle? Who appoints the Inspector General? Lancia's bill calls for the governor, the Attorney General, and the General Treasurer to make the selection. Another bill, sponsored by Representatives Jean-Philippe Barros of Pawtucket and Evan Shanley of Warwick, both Democrats, would have the Speaker decide, with confirmation by the Senate.
What do you see as the pros and cons of each having the Speaker appoint as opposed to the governor?
Well, I nothing against this speaker per se, but you know as well as I do, the history in this building going back with Gordon Fox and Mr. Gallison and former speakers, and we've had a bit of a difficult history with these types of folks in these positions, majority leaders and things. So I just think that they're too close to the situation. We need somebody that would be not involved at all.
House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello told us he is still studying the issue. Senate President Dominic Ruggiero was non-committal, and Governor Gina Raimondo said she is, quote, open to examining this concept more closely. Berberick said a Rhode Island Inspector General could start with something as simple as looking at the state fleet of cars, as he did when he was in Oklahoma.
We find out that there was a lot of extra military vehicles that were being licensed, insured, but not used. And we saved the post a couple of $100,000. That's small potatoes. But that could be something here that very easily implemented that absolutely would not put anybody and a person in the crosshairs. It would say, let's take inventory of all of the physical trucks and cars that are state license plated right now. What is the cost of those? And are there ways to reduce the expense that we're paying for those?
Berberick is already looking to the 2018 session. He has created a website, a Facebook page, and a Twitter account. And he's determined to convince those in leadership this could help them in the long run.
It will help protect the governor. It will help protect the 5 elected people, the senior officers of the state, because unfortunately, I wouldn't say it put you out of a job, but gee, wouldn't it be nice if they got the bad news first from the IG, someone they know and trust, as opposed to going home and watching it on TV?
People argue sometimes about, things being preordained. And sometimes they are, for a variety of reasons. But sometimes if you make the case, people will see the value and will move forward.
Give it a shot for 5 or 10 or 15 years. If it doesn't work, can it? But I think everybody would be pleasantly surprised. And the leadership that has the courage to put this in, they'll be heroes.
At the State House, Jim Hummel for the Hummel Report.